How is someone, a potential donor, matched to a patient in need of a transplant?
So, bone marrow transplant or a stem cell transplant is basically a curative option for hundreds of diseases which are cancerous, non-cancerous. And most of these diseases do not have a potential curative option but for a stem cell transplantation. But for a successful stem cell transplantation, you need someone who has got the same HLA typing as the patient has got. And this HLA typing or HLA matching we inherit from our parents. We get half from the mother and half from the father. Hence, the chances of matching is highest between siblings, between brothers and sisters. The chances of that being around 25%. But the 75% people who require transplant but do not have anyone in the family to donate for them, here we rely on something called as unrelated donor transplant. That means we try to look for anyone in the same country or anywhere in the world who has got the same HLA typing as a patient has got. And if we find some who has got the same HLA typing as a patient has got, what we call as 10 by 10 match, this person is then requested or asked to donate voluntarily for this patient and save his or her life. So hence, in a transplant process, in a stem cell transplant process, this HLA typing is very, very important, and we require the patient and the donor to be having the same HLA typing or matching on HLA typing for the transplant to be successful.
Who takes care of donors during the procedure?
So the process of unrelated donor transplants is basically coordinated and mediated by what we call as unrelated donor registries. So there are three parties involved with this. One is the patient and the doctor who's looking after this patient who requires a stem cell or a bone marrow transplantation. The second party is, of course, the donors, those who have got HLA typing matched with the patient who is supposed to be a voluntary donor. And the third important component of this whole process is very important. This component is very, very important, and we call them as unrelated donor registries. So there is no direct relation or contact of the patient or the doctor of the patient who's being treated with the donor. Whatever interaction or whatever coordination is done by the donor registry. And these donor registries basically do two important activities. One is that they enroll, they go into the community, they go into the society, and they enroll these donors, voluntary donors, on their registry and then explain them the process. And then these people are kind of ready for donation when anyone requires a transplantation. So that's a process called as registration. So that is done by unrelated donor registry. The second process which they're involved with is when someone is a match with the patient, they will go back to that donor, get that donor's further testing done, physical examinations done to make sure that the donor is healthy and also fit to donate for a particular patient. So all of that coordination, all of that workup of the donor is done by the donor registry, and they form a liaison between the patient and the donor.
Will I permanently lose my stem cells? And how much stem cells are collected during the donation procedure?
So it's a very, very important question, and is always asked by the donors who are coming for stem cell donation, and a very relevant too to answer. Unlike solid organ transplants like kidney, liver and other transplants, bone marrow transplant or a stem cell transplant is a very, very unique, I would say, exercise, because you're donating your stem cells from the bone marrow, and these stem cells are renewable. We generate thousands and millions of stem cells every day. So whatever is being used or consumed, the body makes more and more whatever is required by the body. So in a stem cell donation process, what you're doing, you're stimulating these stem cells. You're increasing the number of stem cells by GCSF, and these extra stem cells which have been mobilized by the GCSF are collected in the process of stem cell collection. So literally you do not lose anything. What you have donated is in fact your extra stem cells which have been stimulated by GCSF, and you don't lose anything in the short term or in the long term. It has been seen that the blood parameters, the immediate blood parameters, they come to normal in few days after stem cell donation, and practically everything comes back to normal within a month of stem cell donation. So you're really not losing anything. What you have donated is really the extra stem cells which have been stimulated by growth factor. So it's again a myth that there will be something you'll be missing or losing from your body forever. It doesn't happen like that in stem cell donation process.
What happens to a patient during the time of my GCSF administration, and why is it so important that I should be committed to the cause?
So, see, as I said earlier, when a donor is recruited, when it's found out that the donor is fully matching with the patient, and a few steps are followed post that, their checkup is done, their final clearance is done, and then comes the day when they are finally going to donate. And that before that day, for 4 to 5 days, they get this GCSF to increase the stem cells in the blood. Now, while that is all happening, we have to also understand there will be some processes going on from the patient side also. So what happens to the patient is that before the day of transplant, that means the day the stem cells are collected from the donor and given to the patient, before that, for about a week to 10 days, the patient undergoes what's called as conditioning. That means they undergo very high dose of chemotherapy or very high dose of radiation, which is given to destroy their bone marrow completely, so that when the donation actually happens, when the donor donates the cells and donor cells are given to the patient, these cells go in patient's body, settle down in the bone marrow and start growing. That's in short what the transplant really is. So common sense says that if this patient who has received the 7 to 10 days of high dose of chemotherapy or radiation, and for any reason if they do not get the stem cells from the donor on the day of transplant, they're going to die. Why? Because this treatment has completely destroyed the bone marrow, and they will have no bone marrow left in them which can make any more blood cells and sustain the life of the patient. Hence, donor's commitment is extremely important, and once it has been decided that the patients can start conditioning, can start undergoing this high dose chemotherapy or radiation, really donor cannot back out after that, because it's somebody's life which is at stake. So once you have decided that you want to be a voluntary donor, you have gone through the medical examinations and you give consent for donation, it's very imperative, it's very important that we stick to that decision, because somebody else's life will be at stake, and that person, if he doesn't get the stem cells on that particular day, ultimately they can lose their life.